All right, folks, we're going to start the workshop in 1 minute. Please grab your seats. All righty, it is 12 o'clock, just 2 hours after what it says on the top of the agenda there. That's okay. We will call this particular meeting a special workshop meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to order. We do have on the slate here an invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation will be given by Commissioner Roberts, pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Kerouac. Please join me.
Let's bow our heads, folks. Gracious Heavenly Father, as we begin our workshop on speeding issues and possible remedies, we just pray that we will have wisdom and attention to detail and to seek solutions and that calmness of the discussion and just a healthy discussion among the commission and thank you for guiding us through this morning and help us to bless us as we head into this workshop and help us to make the right decisions and put a hedge of protection around us as well. In your glorious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. Some of you have been here since just about 9 o'clock or so. We're just after, but appreciate it. We are here for a workshop to discuss traffic calming measures, if you will, and we will turn it over here to our Assistant County Administrator, J.D. Langford, for a presentation and let us know where you're at, and we'll talk a little bit more after that.
All righty. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. This has been a request to come up and do kind of like a traffic calming workshop for the public, because from time to time we get requests for different types of speed, say traffic calming, but also speed calming measures. Get a lot of complaints, especially in certain residential neighborhoods and so forth. So went through and kind of, as part of this analysis, did a lot of research into not only are there different engineering type of methodologies that could be utilized, but also to different other characteristics that could be in there, different criteria that we'd have to look at, how we would break it out from a maintenance aspect, from a cost share aspect. So some of that stuff is within this. I don't want to get you guys too far on a sidebar as far as that goes. This is kind of more just kind of some want to say recommendations, but it's more of an education effort to you guys just to see, okay, would you prefer to go this route, to have some sort of program basically implemented or some mechanism to be able to have a traffic calming, structure or whatever along those lines that could be installed, whether it be what I'll go into it, like I said, and discuss a little bit more. So that being said, what is traffic calming? Definition developed by FHWA, so that's the federal, the highway, and ITE, which is the transportation engineers, is the potential reduction of vehicle speeds or volumes on a single street or street network by inserting measures such as horizontal shifts, vertical deflections, lane narrowing, enforcement, striping configurations, and other features that use self-enforcing physical or psychoperception means to produce desired effects. So that was very long, but it's essentially doing, like I said, different methodologies to do that, and I'll kind of show you in the next few slides of what that is. So there's types of traffic calming measures. I don't know if you guys can see that totally, but what it is, it's a combination of what they call vertical deflections, which is essentially would be under the it would be a category for speed tables, speed cushions, and speed humps. So there's a few of those pictures up there that you'll see that are more of the speed table is more of the longer, I guess you'd say it longitudinally, but like with the following the travel path. So essentially what those are is they have to be designed by an engineer, in some capacity to say, okay, what do we need to do as far as the industry standard says for the speed tables and so forth. Also is, like I said, is a speed cushion. Speed cushions are more, instead of being a constant table, which would be kind of more of a, what we call in the engineering world, a trapezoidal type geometry. The speed cushions would essentially be two separate speed tables, speed humps, if you will. And essentially, what it is the methodology behind that is it would still allow emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, something with a wider wheelbase to be able to essentially navigate around those. Those are not ultimately ideal because that breeds behavior where people will try and use passenger cars to go through the two, because essentially it would be two on each travel lane, so you'd have four total in that location. And then speed humps, those are more in line with what you'd see in a parking lot. So we wouldn't want to see the speed humps along the roadways themselves. A lot of people have the misconception of that's what's going to be put out on roadways, but it's not advantageous for anything, basically above 20 to 25 miles an hour. So another methodology would be horizontal shifts, which that's essentially what that's doing is shifting the travel lane using like a horizontal deflection of the lane. So essentially what you could do is you could put, in essence, a roundabout is to a certain degree a horizontal deflection, but you could put other types of barriers internally. It could be by the use of striping too, which I'll go to in a little bit. But I don't know if you can see in those pictures, but essentially there is islands that are put up, median islands that would give you the false impression, but essentially what it would make you do is slow down because you do have a deflection in the travel lane. It's not a straight arrow path, which some of these roadways are. Okay, and this one's getting into striping configurations and utilizing different types of striping measures on existing pavement to reduce the travel width. And this can be used by, on the left-hand side, it's little tick marks that you can see. You might have seen these around, I don't know specifically in Highlands County, but there's some I know I think it's Manatee County as you're heading to the coast over there. As you get closer to like a narrow bridge, you'll see these type of, so it gives you kind of the enclosed feeling, I guess, is what has been explained to me as far as from on the national level, that you don't feel as wide open. So it gives you that closed feeling that you need to slow down. Also, too, you see on the one on the right is more of a kind of a gore area where it's, and this is kind of more of a, in line with the deflection, a horizontal deflection that I was referring to before. And at all costs, if you could utilize that on existing pavement, that's going to be good. I say the drawback for this is typically if you're going to be doing a deflection like that, a horizontal deflection, more times than not, you're going to be having to add additional pavement and so forth. So that's obviously additional cost that you'd have to look at. Lane narrowing or reducing lane widths through curbing, landscaping, striping, and other physical features. This is more in an urbanized setting that you would see this, where you would give you that kind of more shrunk down feeling, I guess, so that it would give you the reasoning that, oh, I need to slow down through this. But this is what you can see is they've kind of done more or less what they would call in the engineering realm as a road diet too. Road diet meaning taking away some of the asphalt and putting in either pedestrian facilities or landscaping or something along those lines. So it doesn't give you the impression that you're wide open and you can go as fast as you want to. Obviously, one of the most effective measures is speed enforcement, not only with patrols with the sheriff's department. I know the sheriff is great about putting out these speed trailers that we have out there. Obviously, that's going to be somewhat, the speed trailers are somewhat of a temporary fix because people get used to them after a few days, but he's great about, moving them around the county, and a lot of people, what we get asked is, oh, can you put cameras on that and send people a ticket? And that gets I'm sure Sherry's probably shaking her head, that gets a lot more complicated. So, and liability and legal and all that stuff. So that's not being, I say requested, but that's not really being presented today. We've also got a grant just recently through the federal government to do, now this is more of a temporary thing, but to do essentially the same thing. It's not a trailer that has the sheriff's department's logo on it, but it would have a digital feedback sign, which studies have shown that it will make people slow down in certain areas, and those are what we call in temporary fashion, where we can move those around as well throughout the county. So we're excited about that, about getting, I think it's 40 signs is what we got the funding for. So that would be an additional traffic calming measure. So the benefits of implementing traffic calming measures, there's a wide variety. A lot of them kind of are interrelated and so forth, but there is potential to reduce speeds in residential and rural neighborhoods. You increase the quality of life for some residents since people are not flying by, and quite a few people like to walk on the road and so forth. Potential to reduce volumes of traffic because people ultimately maybe find a different route if there's that availability to go home. They might go a certain way because they don't want to have to deal with speed humps or whatever that may be. And then, as I alluded to before, pedestrian safety can be improved with people walking their dogs or exercising or doing what they need to where there's not a sidewalk in the area. So, challenges of implementing traffic calming measures. The first two are kind of interrelated, but it would ultimately always come down to lack of funding and cost for installation and maintenance. Obviously, we're a rural community, and as we're working through this budget cycle, we're noticing that certain revenue sources that would potentially fund this are not as robust as they have been in past years. So that's something obviously to keep in mind. There could be potential for reduction of response time for emergency personnel, for them having to slow down if you didn't use what I was saying before, like the speed cushions, if you use a traditional kind of speed table where they'd have to slow down. And then finding the right balance of speed calming measures, because obviously we want to do it if the board decides to go in this manner to give a mechanism, we want to do it in a responsible manner so that there are not these speed calming measures on every single roadway, because that's obviously that's not the intent of what this workshop was about, but also to just kind of put that in the forefront. The legal issues and liability of this in the event that, if someone's moving through there and they're scrubbing, if they have a low suspension car or something along those lines and start tearing up their cars, or if they go off the roadway and run into a tree because they're trying to bypass the speed table, there is potential there. Potential for ADA issues. This is essentially going back to if you don't have a sidewalk in the area and someone is utilizing a wheelchair on, a paved shoulder or something, they really shouldn't be out in the travel lane. But if they're out in that area, is to be able to navigate around whatever it's really more for the vertical deflections, because you're really not supposed to be over a threshold of a quarter of an inch threshold per ADA requirements, which is a federal requirement. So creation of other problems as a result of implementation, such as road edge cracking, that's what I was alluding to, where people might try and go around on the shoulder to bypass that. So at that point, it would be edge cracking of the roadway and the roadway shoulder potentially rutting if it's not a super stabilized shoulder or a grass shoulder or something like that. You could have increased wrecks, what I alluded to before with lane departures, was essentially you're going outside of the lane into the right of way, into a house or a tree or a mailbox or something along those. So, and then that just goes back to increase in vehicle damage as well. So, what are the costs associated with this? And I kind of really honed in on what we get most requests for was the speed tables. Not to say that you couldn't look at the horizontal deflections and everything like that, but for the sake of this workshop, I really wanted to kind of hone in on what the main requests were. So I reached out to a company called Travel Logics Corporation, and they make, and lack of a better term, a rector set. But it's really not that. It's not plastic. It's like a composite that they use ultimately. And in talking to him, to the gentleman that I talked to that was kind of the salesperson for it, essentially what it would be is he asked, okay, what's the width of your average width of your roadways? And I said, well, a lot of them are, 10 to 11 feet. We're trying to get them up to county standard, which is usually around 11 feet, but you got to probably say, hey, it's about 10 and a half feet wide. So based on that information, he recommended a 14 foot, meaning 14 foot longitudinally along the profile of the road, and then 18 foot wide, and essentially a 3-inch vertical deflection. And like I said before, that would be kind of a little more of like a trapezoid where you have 2 ramps and a flat spot on top. So with those, what they gave us is using a speed table. What we'd have to do too is essentially we would have to use MUTCD arrows, which is that's a federal governing agency too, to tell you where the striping and signage should be. So including the arrows and the signage as well, we're looking at roughly about $5,500 per location. And that would be, you'd probably have to have multiple of these throughout the locations, but that would have to be obviously determined by an engineer. We looked at also too, and not utilizing that composite material. It's like, okay, you see them probably in other different local government areas or municipalities and so forth, is an asphalt speed table, which essentially is, it says it in the name, it's created by the use of asphalt and layering it. So with that one, if we're looking at, speed tables with signage and with the arrows that I alluded to too, and you can kind of see, it's dim up there, but you can kind of see the arrows that I'm referring to. It just kind of emphasizes the speed table even more. So you can see that this price right here is based on in-house installation, meaning road and bridge essentially doing the work and not an outside contractor, is about $3,750 per location. This is the speed cushions that I was referring to earlier. This is where, if you had a wider wheel path, but this does give, you can get by it with a wider wheel path, but this does give the opportunity of someone essentially with a wider wheelbase getting around that and it not affecting them as much. So we'd have to look, these are kind of more geared towards certain situations where it calls for, there's larger traffic or something along those. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you change? I'm sorry. Can you change? Yeah, to the next one. Thank you. So this is the one I was referring to on the speed cushion. So if there were a large truck traffic going down the roadway or something along those lines, which we wouldn't prefer going through local roads, but this could be a methodology that could be utilized. So that one's roughly about the same as the asphalt, which is $3,772 per location would be the estimate. Okay, so this is where I kind of said in the very beginning, I say recommended criteria for implementation, but this is not me saying, hey, this has to be this way necessarily. This is just based on the research that I've done and kind of to give you, the commissioners, an education on what's been done in other areas or what certain criteria have been done by the industry standards. So one being request, this is kind of goes without saying, it must be on unincorporated local road. So local road would be the classification that the county has identified. So, there's different types of classifications just for the public. There could be a local road, there could be a rural collector, there could be a major collector, there could be an arterial road. So arterial roads are like US 27. Major collectors are like Hammock Road. Your local roads are going to be more like your residential roads and so forth that kind of somewhat tie into these collectors. So I always say that, your arterials are more like your arteries, your collectors are more like your veins, and your local roads are more kind of like your capillaries going into your veins, for a medical term. So if the maximum speed limit on roadway is 35 miles an hour, obviously you don't want to get much more than that. Because essentially if someone's going 45 and they hit a speed table, it's not usually good news. So that's kind of a requested maximum speed limit. Requested roadway cannot connect directly to arterial roadway. More times than not, like I said, that's going to be a collector road. So it wouldn't be classified as a local road. So you don't have that very often, but I'm not saying that it never happens throughout the county. So there is a possibility for that. Requested roadway.
Would that be like Heron and Gulf Hammock? And, Hammock Road and Heron?
I think Heron I think it's a minor collector. I'd have to look at that. Yeah, I mean, it's more for, like I said, it'd be more for your local side. I mean, it would be coming off, maybe especially the roads coming off of Heron, would be considered a local. The ones that are paved. I mean, obviously the ones that are unpaved, and it would have to be, and that would be also too. I didn't include that, but it'd have to be a maintained road by the county for these type of situations. Because I mean, if you don't want to put speed tables with shell material or something like that, just because that would be a maintenance nightmare. So requested roadway cannot be adjacent to emergency provider locations. That's just goes back to response time that we're referring to. And this is just based on, this is, like I said, this is open for total discussion on this one, but it's like 50-50 match between applicant and Highlands County, whether it be through like an assessment, an MSBU or something along those lines. Requested distance of roadway must be 600 feet or longer. What the intent of this is to make sure that it's not, if each individual come in and said, okay, I want one right in front of my house, it's not going to work because you don't want one every 25 feet. That's just not going to work for everybody. So we have to put some sort of minimum dimension on that from the request. 100% participation, that's also a question. That's not saying it has to be 100% participation, but from residents along the requested roadway. What is that? What does it look like? Is it 52% or 51%? Is it 67% participation? But what would that look like? It would have to be through a form of petition. Me personally, I would think it would have to be in form of some sort of permit as well, some sort of mechanism to be able to go through the proper procedures and protocols to get appropriate notification out to the residents in the neighborhood and so forth, and make sure that everybody meets whatever that criteria if you choose to move forward in that form or fashion. So that's where I kind of alluded to a right-of-way use permit must be applied for by the applicant so that they would be responsible for any future maintenance. So that's what we have right now is a right-of-way use permit. So if you want to put anything in the right-of-way, you have to go through the engineering department and do a right-of-way use permit. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be a different permit, but at least that's an existing mechanism that's there potentially for that. Applicant procure a licensed engineer to provide sign and seal design plans with a right-of-way use application. Saying that because right now our cup runneth over in the engineering department. We just, with all the upcoming projects and the existing workload, it's a huge task to ask the Highlands County Engineering Department to look at this. And like I said, it's just dependent on how many requests we get in that regard, but this would be the preference, is it be a licensed engineer, not only for that, but for potential legalities and so forth, and putting that liability on the county or on the licensed individual that works for the county. And also, two, would be maximum of 3 speed tables per roadway request unless authorized by the county engineer. That kind of goes back into, within that 600 feet, essentially that's 200, or every 200 feet. We wouldn't probably want to have that frequency of speed tables, but that would be something that would have to be determined by a licensed engineer. This is just another recommended criteria for implementation. Whoever goes out and does, because there's going to have to be a study. We just can't willy-nilly obviously go out and put speed tables or speed cushions or speed common measures anywhere we want to. There's got to be obviously an engineered, designed, and thought process, methodology, and analysis has to go with that. So a couple of the data points that have to go with it is speed and volumes through there will be collected by the county. I've just said by the county. That could be by an outside vendor or something as well. But we do have the capability to do that in I'd say in a small capacity. I'm not saying we could go out and do it for every single individual, but through our traffic ops department. So what does that look like? When you do the speed counts, we look at the 85th percentile speed. It must be at least 7 miles per hour or under the speed limit, meaning like if 85% of the people are of the collected data is going a certain speed limit, and we get like like I said, 85th percentile average speed, I guess you could say. And usually that's how we kind of determine what the speed limits are. There's more engineering judgment goes into it, but it needs to be within 7 miles over or under that speed limit. And then 50% or more of the recorded vehicles must be traveling over the posted speed limit. This is another one that's, like I said, open for discussion, but not necessarily a requirement. Is a minimum of 500 vehicles per day on a roadway segment. The way that this was come up with is we use the Florida Green Book for like design purposes, and what we look at it is based on different classifications of roadways, which would be kind of consistent with whatever the shoulder width would be as well, because different speeds have different shoulder requirements, but it also is correlated to how many vehicles per day are coming through that. Local roadways potentially are all going to be 500 vehicles or so, but there might be these occasions where there are less. There might be some where there's 12 people live on the roadway or something along those lines, and they meet all the other criteria. So that's something that, like I said, we'll have to look at. I just kind of put it on here as far as what's been used in other areas, just for discussion purposes. And then located as to not obstruct mailboxes, utility boxes, or driveways. You obviously wouldn't want to put it right in line with someone's driveway or in line with somebody's mailbox, and the mailman can't really get to it, and it's a weird vertical deflection and everything like that. Okay, and with that, I wanted to keep it kind of short and simple, not go into too great detail. We can definitely do that at a later date. I just wanted to get this information in your hands and in the public's hands as well. And we can definitely expand or expound on anything that I've discussed here today. But with that, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for JD at this point? Okay. All right, very good. Before we open up to public comment, I want to thank you. I want to also thank the other commissioners, by the way, for agreeing to do this workshop. It was one that I proposed a while ago, just to keep the door open and to consider the fact that one size does not fit all, and that there may be situations out there where some sort of speed calming measure may be the best approach. There may be some that it's not a great approach. There may be, like I said, it's not a broad brush. We're not going to turn Highlands County into speed table or speed humpville. We don't have to worry about that, but there may be some situations there where it may work out well. Obviously, it's going to depend on a whole bunch of things, and you outlined very well many of those things. Expectation-wise, I believe for this conversation, for the workshop, is to get some initial public input and then bring it back and say, okay, commissioners, of this criteria that you mentioned, as you mentioned, there's some that are pretty much, I think everybody would be in agreement with. There might be some that might be some sort of adjustment or some sort of a fluctuation to. There might be some discussion on, and I think we probably need to just come back and hopefully just establish a process. That's the whole goal, is to establish some sort of criteria or process so that if somebody wants to look at, hey, can I get possibly some, speeding's crazy on my road, can I get something there? Then they go through an application, and that application then looks at, initial qualification. Is the road, speed limit under 35 miles an hour, 35 or under, and, some of those things that you talked about. And then, of course, some kind of an initial inspection, so where that our staff would say, okay, well, here's what we would recommend. It may be a speed table, it may be the narrowing, it may be any combination of a bunch of different things that you just kind of outlined. Here's what we recommend, here's how much that would cost now, and then this would go back to our criteria. How then would we have that paid for? Is it 100% on the people that live on that road? Is it a 50-50 match? It is something else? And how do you decide that? So that's the kind of stuff that we kind of need to kind of get into a little bit more of the weeds on. But for the purpose of this conversation, about 3.5 hours into it, from the beginning of our meeting, I would think it'd probably be to get some public input and then just get some general direction so we can come back and have staff come back and say, okay, here's the things that we would recommend, and then we would then kind of attack some of these points one by one. Anyway, so that's the thought process ahead of time. Each person that would like to speak will be given up to 3 minutes to do so, and we will then take that public input and go from there. So if you would like to speak, I would recommend you kind of head down towards that section over there by the podium, kind of sit in that first row or so. That way we have kind of somebody that's ready to go and somebody that's on deck, so to speak. 3 minutes, yes. Up to 3, don't have to use the entire 3, but again, if you would, just kind of limit that. I know there's some folks that are passionate about this subject, either yay or nay. All right. And don't everybody rush to be first. Go ahead, right ahead if you like to. Yes, ma'am.
Thunderbird Hills South Mobile Home Park. And we have a lot of speeding in our park. And we live on a corner going towards the exit. But they come down from the other end and they are speeding. They have to put their brakes on to get around the corner. We have a lot of walkers in our park. It's a 55-plus park. We have people walking. We have people walking with their dogs. We have somebody being pushed in a wheelchair. We have no speed limit signs in our park. I think they were out when the one in 2017, the hurricane Irma. I think it was after that. We have no speed limit signs. We have a stop sign going out of the park before you get on Thunderbird Hill Road. And we have a stop sign when you come into the park because you can go, around this way. People don't stop at the stop sign, going out or coming in. And I don't know what can be done about that. But also in the park behind us, there's one person in particular who speeds like he's going to a fire somewhere. And he has been told by people in the back park to slow down, but he does not. And I just think that the day is coming when there will be a true horrendous accident in our park because of the speeding. And I would like to see something done for that. I don't know, speed table, I wouldn't have a problem with the speed table, but I don't know what can be done, but something needs to be done.
Thank you. So, for purposes of this discussion here, although it's important to hear individual neighborhoods or streets that have problems, we're not debating that necessarily today. What we're going to be debating primarily is, and JD, you might want to bring up some of those recommended criteria slide that you had on there, is discussion about maybe some of those items, whether or not you agree or disagree with some of those things. Obviously, the mobile home park is a great example of under 35 miles an hour. There's no question there. Some of the things that are being mentioned might be able to be addressed through signage that we may be missing. through enforcement, that may be a possibility there too. So I would certainly encourage anybody that can help out with those areas to maybe meet with these residents either right after they get up and speak or outside in the hallway. Really what I'm looking for today is, again, to kind of come back and say, okay, yes, we like this idea of possibly having these speed tables. We encourage the commission to kind of look forward to speed calming measures and maybe 500 cars a day may be too many. Maybe that should be more like about 200 or so, because it kind of depends. But I mean, just suggestions like that might be more helpful for us. But if you do have specific areas, please make sure that we're aware of it. We've got quite a few folks in green uniforms here that I'm sure they may or may not be aware of all those areas. They're probably aware of most of them, if not all of them, but there may be one or two surprises out there. So who would like to be next? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name's Dan Esslinger. I live on the corner of Kite and Heron. My house faces Heron, and I've lived there for 35 years. So I've seen a lot of changes over the years. I think there's a misconception about Heron, how it's used. It goes straight into Hammock Road. Now, over the years, Country Club of Sebring has increased exponentially in residents. You have Golf Hammock's always been over there, and then you've had some different, development across the street. I can tell you right now, I could sit on my porch and watch 100 cars come by my house in an hour at least. There is a stop sign at the corner of Thrush, four-way stop, from the area coming north on Heron. Once the cars hit the stop sign, they're doing 45. There's a sign about 50 feet from that stop sign that says 30. They're not doing 30. It's like a drag race up through there. Now, I understand Heron, we do see a lot of emergency vehicles on there, and certainly we don't want to keep them from, doing their jobs. I don't really have an answer to the question. I don't think speed tables on Heron would be a good thing. However, maybe a warning sign up there going back towards Hammock, when they come down going north, that there is a speed change. Or sometimes you see these radar run areas or things like that might slow people down. Because I'm telling you, I can sit out there and there's cars that, especially young people with trucks and the hot rods, that use that stop sign as like a drag race. They're not drag racing anybody but themselves, but they want everybody to know they have a hot, fast car. We've all been kids. We know what we're talking about. A lot of young people driving fast up through there, and it goes on 24 hours a day. Basically, it gets quiet at night, but it's still there. So I kind of come here begging you to do something about it because it's getting out of hand. Somebody's gonna get hurt. I walk my dog up and down the side streets, and those are supposed to be 25. They're doing 50 up through there. I can tell you right now. Of course, I have no proof, but it's out of hand now. It really is. So I appreciate the job that you do, and if you can help us in any way, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Jack Carson, and I live off of Bruns Road, which connects Flair Road with Hammock Road. So we're like the sub-Heron Sparrow, and they don't use it as a shortcut. Then they use our road as a shortcut. We have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on the road, which is great, but we have a dotted passing line down the middle of it, which to me, maybe I could talk to the maintenance department, engineering. It doesn't make any sense on a 25-mile-an-hour road to have a dotted passing line down the middle because people obviously think they can just slingshot around and, when someone's going 25, they speed up to 50 and pass and continue down the road. I'm sure we're Collector Road, obviously, because Hammock and 27, that's the shortcut through to get across there. So I don't know if just repainting the lines, but next time they paint them as a solid line instead of a passing line would help some, maybe. I don't know if there's any option of putting stop signs maybe halfway down that road, but it would help us, so thank you.
Thank you. My name is Glenn Dillman, and I live in the same park that Mr. Carson does. I live at 2119 Burning Tree Circle. Generally speaking, I guess what you could say is speed signs are basically a mere suggestion to a lot of people. They just run right through them. Our road off of Brun Road that goes into Flair, and Flair goes up by the Allen J dealership, it's not wide enough for the amount of traffic that's on there. We have the new park that's being developed at Rum Runners. We have about 4 or 5 different parks on that road. And to be perfectly honest, it's not much more than a paved cow path. At both ends, if you want to compare it to a hose, a lot of water is coming through the hose. And it's coming in off of Hammock, and it goes out at Flair. And the thing is, there's not really, then we're getting more and more water coming into that hose. But at both ends of that hose, there's a big problem. There's no stoplight at the end of, and there's going to be a major accident, and there's going to be some deaths at the where Hammock and Brun Road meet. At the other end of the road, this last week, I saw a person, oh boy, it's hard to describe because every time I go there, my wife and I talk about the access into that mall that comes off of Flair. People come out of there and block the road. They come. One time I saw the interchange was totally blocked, where a person was in the middle coming out. Somebody wanted to come in. Every lane was blocked, and it was backed up on 27. And I know you have a lot of problems with different authorities. You have the state highway to deal with, you got the county to deal with, and you got the town of Sebring to deal with. But what I would really like to see you do is do a study of that road and maybe a general study of other places where these people are saying that we've got a problem. But there's a major problem there, and it's only going to be exacerbated by what's going to happen at Rum Runners. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Brad Schumann. I'm from Placid Lakes. I think I've been here before. A couple of things, and I'd like to focus on this, what you've got up here. In our community, I'm not sure what's a collector road and what's not. Where would we go to define that, see that definition?
Yeah, we have the interactive map on our website, and we can make sure that we get that out with the link and everything to it.
Okay.
So, but it's through our GIS department.
We have a pretty active homeowners association out there, and I'd like to use your PowerPoint. If I could get a copy of that or a hard copy of it, we'll make that presentation at our next general membership meeting in May.
Sure thing, we'll work on that. Thank you.
To go down to specific things, the first one caught my eye is that 100% participation. You couldn't get 100% participation if you wanted to know if the sun's going to rise tomorrow. So that's pretty arbitrary. The permit process for speed bumps, I know you're in the process of putting something together for that, but road signs like stop signs and no truck signs, is there a procedure for that, or could that be incorporated in this procedure?
I would say that, you're talking about large truck signs and so forth?
Well, I'm more concerned with stop signs. We've got, I don't want to get into specific, we got one of those roads that's 5 miles long without any stop signs.
Placid Lake Boulevard, yeah. So, yeah, and essentially that's what we can look at. I mean, I can go on engineering recommendations all day long, but
Is there a procedure? If not, can you incorporate a procedure with this speed bump procedure?
as part of the stop sign requirements,
Yeah.
I would say that That's what I was getting into, is the MUTCD that I was referring to in the federal requirements. It stands, it's an acronym. But essentially what it is it says do not utilize stop signs for speed control. Like,
But we all know it does.
I know it does. I know it does. I'm just telling you what the
Okay.
recommendation is. So recommendations go, like I said, not with the grain of salt, but we've got to follow some, to a certain degree, we have to follow that.
Anyway, we need to look at that. Some of the criteria set by you noted one group, and I forget what the name of it was, but is a lot of that arbitrary, or is there any discussion around those criteria set for speed bumps, and just like the matching funds, the future maintenance, a licensed engineer to do a speed bump, or a professional engineer to do a speed bump? That seems pretty extreme.
These are all suggested criteria. None of that has been obviously finalized. There's some things I think that, and you touched on it, some of those things I think everybody would pretty much agree with. Some of those things that might be a little bit more up in the air. We'll probably discuss that a little bit more in just a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I have one? There is a company out of Jacksonville that monitors GPS in the car or your telephone and traffic patterns, and they use AI to designate which areas. You may want to look at that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say we're utilizing, we just signed a contract for, it's called Streetlight, but it does exactly what you're talking about. And it's great technology. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Mary Warner.
Oh, wait till you get the microphone. Okay, now go ahead.
Mary Warner. I think I've communicated with some of you via email some of the problems. In listening to this, my takeaway is that I think it would be constructive if at some point we were able to come up with some committees to identify the areas that we're talking about. You probably know about my area, but I think it's a statewide issue. It's a county issue, but with the different issues with mobile home parks, with stop signs, with all the things that require the enforcement, we probably need to be able to hone in and identify exactly what the problem is in each area before we take a blank slate and put a speed table in at every area. I'd love to have one in my area. But I think, as Mr. Stevens says, it probably is going to take some study to identify what's appropriate. Thank you to Mr. Langford, who reduced the speed limit from 35 to 25 in our area. For a while it helped, now it doesn't. But again, that's a situation where if you take each specific area, perhaps that can happen. It would really be beneficial if we could move on to the next stage of doing something. If it means creating a committee, let's do that. I'll sit on one. I've offered to do that. But let's identify the areas that need help and then move on that and then report back.
That's one way to do it. We're actually kind of trying to do the exact same thing, but a little bit differently, as opposed to having little mini committees that would be a bit of a nightmare and sunshine law and all that fun stuff. It probably would be what we're trying to do is establish some general guidelines that the county will say, okay, we're not going to put speed bumps on a roadway of over 35 miles an hour. As just general guidelines that would include things like that.
Correct.
And then an application process where you perhaps and your neighbors, who probably could form your own little mini committee, if you will, because it's a neighborhood type thing, would then be able to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and submit an application because we think we've got whatever percentage of people that we need to that wants to have a speed table, whatever, have the county come out and do the inspection, because the county's not going to come out. They're going to come out and look at anything that they have these applications for. And then they'll come out, do the inspection, make sure it meets the requirements that we're talking about, and then they will come out and give their best recommendations based on that individual case that you're mentioning. So it is pretty much what you're saying. It's just going to be able to do it a little bit differently, because if we do it with many committees up front, it'll just get bogged down forever. It'll be a little bit easier if we have
So who
some
would that
hurdles
committee
there.
interact with? So if you had if you had a committee that was established, who would that committee chair interact
Well,
with?
there wouldn't be, again, the committee chair, in your neighborhood, I'll just pick on you, for example, and just say that you're going to be the chair for your neighborhood. And you then would obviously get with your neighbors, make sure that it's not just you that wants a speed table, for example, and then come before this, come in and fill out an application. And the application would then meet all the criteria that we have to have here, and would also trigger then engineering to come out and take a look and see what needs to be done. And then they would also give an estimate as to what the cost would be.
Right.
And based on what that criteria is that we establish today and going forward, then that cost would be either a cost share, all that still has to be kind of worked out at the top level, so to speak.
Okay,
Then I think we would they would take measurements, they would make sure that it meets the criteria that JD was mentioning with a certain percentage of people that are speeding, that if he finds out there's 500 cars a day, but only 2 of them are speeding, it's not a rampant problem. You may see it a little bit differently, and it may turn out to be a rampant problem, and that's why we kind of need to have, it has to meet all those qualifications before he comes back. So,
okay.
yeah, I think we're all kind of going in the same general direction, it's just a little bit different way to get there. Anybody else want to speak at this point? Yes. Come on down to the front here, and then you'll be on deck next. You won't have quite as long of a walk.
Hello again, my name is Ron Mearns. I made it perfectly clear, I think, on my presentation on February 18th to the commissioners about the problem that we are having on a residential street. And after that, I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Langford and with Mr. Harrison, and they've been very helpful in explaining the process and what was going on, especially with the plans to pave Sparrow Avenue. And if that is going to go through, this would be the opportune time to incorporate some of these speed calming devices while the road is being redone or widened, paved, whatever you want to call it, rather than having to go back and retrofit something on a road that had already been done. Maybe this could even be used as an example or a trial for the county to work on. But most of what I had in my presentation, Mr. Langford echoed this morning as far as vehicle counts and speed limits, that sort of thing. And I think one of the goals with speed calming, speed control, is to try to slow that through traffic, get it slowed enough that it will get it out of the neighborhood. And Mr. Langford kind of echoed my sentiments in that when he stated, if you make it more difficult, the people will find another way to travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kay Lux, and I live on Sparrow Avenue, which is quite the speedway. But I guess my question is, everybody in this room has the same issues, and God bless law enforcement, because there's no way you guys can be everywhere you need to be all the time. What can we as a community do? I mean, they're flying, 60 miles an hour past my house, which to me puts myself and my dog and potentially other people's safety at risk. And I've been part historically of neighborhood watch programs where see something, say something. But how do you do that? I mean, I'll sit in my front yard and take pictures of license plates. If somebody will give me a radar gun, I'll hold it all day. I'm just saying I would help. But this is a situation that we have to appeal to you, because the things that I would do to slow the speed limit down was probably not something the police department would want me to do. And I'm not saying I don't want to do that, but there just seems like there ought to be a way for the citizens to be able to help. I don't know, can I put a flashing spotlight in my yard if they come by with a radar detector that blinds them? No, because then they'll, wreck my house. But, I'm just saying, if there's anything that law enforcement can help the community to feel like we're a little bit empowered, to at least make our community safe if we want to participate. That's just my 2 cents. This is all going to come to fruition, and it's going to happen. It has to. Sebring's growing. It's all part of growth. But in the meantime, is there anything that we can do? I don't know. I have to ask our police officers. That's all really
it's a good question, and really, any kind of solution is going to be not anything that you had to do with radar or spotlights, but
I know that. I'm
but that's
just-
I know those were all tongue in cheek. I get it. Although I've asked the sheriff many times for a ticket book
Yeah.
and arrest powers, and it's never worked out.
I know.
So
But if we have individuals that are chronic abusers, can we turn them in?
you can certainly contact the non-emergency number of the sheriff's office, the 7200 number there, 402-7200, and give them information that sells that. And if they have somebody that is able to come by, I've seen many times where they've gone and they've kind of knocked on a door afterwards and say, hey, don't want to be rude or anything like that. We didn't see you doing it, but we heard that you were going, really, really fast just down the road here. And sometimes that takes care of the problem. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does. And so between enforcement, road design, and speed calming measures, that's really all we can kind of legally do.
Right.
But I would definitely not recommend being very obvious if you're taking pictures of license plates. Like I said,
I know.
for safety perspective, I would leave that probably to the professionals and just kind of give them a description and such like that. But if you see a license plate, that's great, but don't make it so obvious.
Gotcha. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak at this point? Yes, sir. I think we're almost down to the end here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tom Lux. That's my lovely wife. Just to kind of break the tension and keep things calm as I listen to all of these great ideas, and I am liking the speed table as opposed to the other options that are up there. But I have done a recent study on Sparrow. If you put an office chair and a lamp out your front yard and put for sale, everybody slows down to look at what you've got. And that works better than anything else I've found.
All right. Yeah, if you put down community, on your recommended criteria, community-wide garage sale or yard sale. Might be an excellent, okay, good. All right, very good. And I think he kind of ended up on a high note there. So, again, no one size fits all. And you kind of heard that because we got completely different kinds of roads here. You've got Thunderbird Hills south there, the mobile home park, where the speed limit is probably, on a good day, should be like 8 or 10. It should be very, very low. And then, of course, you've got speed limits on some of these other roads of Flair and Bruns and Sparrow and Heron, that probably should be, 35-ish, some to 30, 35, and have to kind of get lower. Placid Lakes as well. So, Commissioners, very, very quickly, just to touch on it, is there any, I'd like to go down, if possible, maybe just some of these recommended criteria, get your kind of just general thoughts on some of these criteria, and then we can kind of, that way we can give staff some direction to come back to us with a little bit more of a policy that we can kind of further adjust and adapt with Commissioner Tuck being here at the time. If that's okay. That way we can wrap up here reasonably quickly. First one that I think JD had was request must be on an unincorporated local road. I think that's pretty safe to say, right? Or no? Anybody have any problems with that one? How about maximum speed limit, no more than,
Before we go through, I was just gonna touch on, I think some of the
Sure.
biggest problems we is gonna come down to cost, I think.
yeah,
For whatever option we're out there. And we know the state's cutting funds in half for the last couple of years from SCOP and scrap, which helps our deal. Our transportation fund, we put in $1.5 million from general fund last year. This year's projected, we're gonna put in $4.5 to $5 million, and there's no end in sight on that with more fuel efficient cars, electric cars, no way to do it. There's some public safety issues on response times. I know you talk to EMS and those, and police on violent crimes, seconds could be lives. So I just think we got to be real careful before we set up a program. I think it was mentioned law enforcement is the best, most effective way, biggest deterrent. Sheriff's Office, the last 4.5 years I've been here, has done a great job as hot spots pop up to move enforcement, the speed trailers to help do it. I think there's probably been speeding from day one when the car was invented. But they do a good job, I think, getting to those problem areas. Sparrow, I know I spoke to JD about when they do repave that. He's talked about maybe bringing those lines in to make it, give the visual that the lane's not as wide as it looks to protect the shoulder and help with speed there. And there's going to be, I mean, and part of the thing I realized this past week now, you actually have Google Maps of that is taking people, if you're going north on Sebring coming off 635, they'll take you Hammock to Heron, Sparrow, because more and more routes we're growing, people are trying to get off of 27 and seeing alternate routes. But I think before we go through each one of these criteria, I think cost is going to be the biggest issue going around here. And like you said, you don't want to have, we don't want to be the tabletop capital of the world either. I can tell you, for instance, in Sun Lake, I don't know how many, if you live on the backside of Sun Lake and Sebring, how many of those speed tables you put in that their district put in. I can tell you there's some homeowners there that have moved since then because of it. But if you're on the back end and you have an emergency and your ambulance can't administer medicine because they're going up and down to get back to that, which is a pretty good ways back in there on the backside of Sun Lake. That's just one example. So I think, yeah, some of these might work in certain areas, but the cost and then public safety to me would be number one.
Very good. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I know we could go through the recommended criteria one by one. I'd like to share a couple comments. Certainly, I'd like to start out by telling everybody here and everybody listening, nothing irritates me more, just like you folks do, that people that are disrespectful in neighborhoods, whether it's speeding through neighborhoods, not taking care of their property, degrading your property value, things like that. Those things all highly irritate me also. But unfortunately, that's a societal problem, and those things are hard to manage. I have made it pretty clear during my term as a commissioner that I oppose speed tables and those type of devices. When I got elected in 2020, I made a commitment to the people of Highlands County that everybody gets treated equally from me. What I will do for one, I will do for another if they come and ask for the same thing, because they deserve equal treatment. When it comes to speed tables, if there was no buy-in from anybody on the street, we would literally be opening up Pandora's box in this county, with no doubt whatsoever, okay? Mr. Mearns that lives on Sparrow Avenue. If we put him on Sparrow, I've done some research on this, what folks are then going to do, you're going to see a diversion in the traffic pattern. So they're going to say, I don't want to traverse the speed bumps on Sparrow anymore, so it's going to fix your problem, and the people live on Sparrow, but it's going to shift the problem somewhere else, because they're going to take one of the streets either to the north or the south, or maybe they'll start using Watley or what have you. And now we're going to be now that those people are going to come to us and say, well, we need speed tables also because you just put them up on Sparrow. So we want them also. You see the problem that presents for us when it comes to your taxpayer dollars, okay? I've also researched with some other counties that they've done this, and people that wanted speed tables and say, yeah, we want them. The crew goes out there and starts putting them in and says, well, I don't want it in front of my house. I just want it on my street. Because when you talk about changing the noise pattern, if a speed table happens to be placed in front of your house, you're going to do nothing now instead of dealing with speeders, hearing vehicles stopping or slowing, then accelerating when they get over the speed table, and now causing noise pollution for you, okay? I think and we've all heard and we all know that being law enforcement to be in all places at all time is literally impossible, not only here in this county, in the state and around the country. But one of the things that I would like to explore more when it comes to speeding in neighborhoods, if you've lived in Florida for any time and you travel south on Highway 27, if you go through Moorhaven, Florida, the speed limit is 25 miles an hour through Moorhaven. And they've done a pretty good job of getting that message across in Moorhaven that if you've driven that stretch of road a time or two or can stop, that you approach Moorhaven, you better be running about 35 to 40 miles an hour, because if you're not, pretty good chance you're going to get you a high-speed driving award going through there. I know the Highway Patrol, Florida Highway Patrol, and maybe the Sheriff's Department, correct me, I think they maybe still, I think it used to be called the Rat Pack or something, and they would move them around the state of Florida to do targeted enforcement in areas. Maybe as a commission, and I know these all cost dollars, but so don't speed tables, so don't the maintenance of speed tables, costs all the taxpayers money. Maybe we could look into the idea of getting with our sheriff, coming up with some additional funding. We have a deputy now in this county that does nothing all day, every day, but handles illegal dumping. Maybe we could have a deputy that we do nothing in this county, but we target neighborhoods on a very consistent basis to get the message out there. And when we start writing a lot of tickets, and people say, where's the rat pack going to be at today in Highlands County? And come up with funding to direct it to an enforcement issue. That is where our sheriff is handicapped because he only has so many dollars to go around. He can't be in all places at all times. But this commission would have the authority and the ability to say, we're going to fund a special division within the sheriff's department to do nothing but address speeders in residential neighborhoods. Unless it's an absolute emergency that it's an all call and everybody has to go. Other than that, they're not going to be handling crimes. They're going to be handling speeders in neighborhoods and start writing tickets and start getting the message out there. To me, that's the way to approach this, because unless there's some sort of buy-in, and I wouldn't vote for anything in favor that's less than 50% of the people on that street paying the cost of putting those speed tables in. I would not be able to support anything like that. And then also, they would have to sign an affidavit or an agreement, have at least a minimum of 50% on their street that say, yes, I want them, and yes, I have no problem that if they happen to be positioned right in front of my home, okay? And then maybe some sort of trial program or something like that. But anything less than that, folks, is going to open up Pandora's box, and we're playing favorites. No, we put them over here because it's a higher taxing district or what have you. They're paying more taxes, so they're getting them. We're not getting them over here. It would just open up to me, something that is going to be very hard for this commission to navigate. So that's where I'm at when it comes to speed tables or what have you. I don't disagree with any of you that people need to follow the speed limit and be respectful in neighborhoods for the safety of the people that live in those neighborhoods. But speed tables is not the answer to me. Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
To Commissioner Carrick's point real quick, I would just say if we're going to do a percentage, I would recommend the 75% to keep it as the same as when we bring a Shell Rock Road to a county maintained road, there's a 75%. The neighbors and they have to have a 75%, they have to agree on that to keep it all the same.
Well, you're saying, Commissioner Campbell, you're saying 75% that it would be 75% participation relative to the cost? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's to agree to have it done. Like if they're going to bring up currently county maintained road to a paved road status, 75% have to agree that they want it paved. And then, then they do the cost share after that.
But that's, I guess I didn't see how that ties into whether we have speed tables or not. But it just, but my basically thoughts are that as complaints go to the sheriff's office or the PD, they track the complaints. They respond to the complaints. They can't be all places at all time, but where the greatest problems are, I feel law enforcement does send their people that direction. If the sheriff wanted to, it would require, you would mention about perhaps an additional position to enforce the speeds in various neighborhoods, and so that would be an additional cost for us, and because I don't think the sheriff would pull one person off of one duty and take them someplace else, so it might be worth consideration of additional position or more. I know that earlier years ago they came up with the cost of having a speed enforcement unit, and that was really an outrageous cost of all those additional personnel enforcing speeds, and that's all they do. And the cost was, when you have to prioritize the greatest needs, and never went to the very, very top. Let's get a speed enforcement unit. I know there's an issue, there's a concern. I actually have, my daughter lives in Sebring Hills. Two of my daughters live in Sebring Hills on Robin Avenue, and they travel Heron, they travel Sparrow. I certainly don't like seeing that being a place where it's dangerous to be in your yard or have kids in the front yard. I don't like that. What do they say? I think, you grease the wheel that squeaks the most. And it seems to me that as people within a given neighborhood, petition, so to speak, or call your law enforcement agency, they want peace, they want safety, they want law-abiding citizens, and they want to nab those who are breaking the law. But they can't be everywhere all the time. Even if you have a special designated unit, that's all they do is enforce the law. They still won't be everywhere. And the law enforcement administration will continue to get call after call after call, well, you need to send your unit over here, because people seem to know where they are and they move around to different places. So it seems to me that this is a law enforcement issue. And if they want to put a request in for additional personnel to address certain areas, we just look to the sheriff and the senior management to make recommendations to us where they think the greatest dollars should be spent. And that's kind of where I'm leaning. Every one of these commissioners are very pro-law enforcement, and we want to fund their request. And we do. But you can't, you can't get all your needs met. You have to prioritize. There's only so much money to go around. So I would like to just kick it back to, our senior management within law enforcement, the sheriff and his senior management, and they can respond as problems come up. And if they feel the need is to get additional staff and they want to make that case during the budget process, that would be something we would all take in consideration. That's kind of how I'm thinking based on what I've heard today. And that don't take this as an interpretation. We don't care. I do care. I just want to know the top priority and let law enforcement decide where they need to put their resources and make recommendations to us for that. That's kind of how I feel at this point.
Okay. So let me ask you this question, Commissioner Roberts, because you just mentioned that. So are you not of the opinion that we should even continue going further with talking about speed tables at this point then? Or you lean more towards the law enforcement side of things, or no? Did I read that wrong?
Thanks for the question. Well, I think when we start talking about speed table, the issue does certainly come up is the engineering piece, who's going to pay for it, the construction, who's going to pay for it, and a lot of people say they want this, they want that, want law enforcement to do this and do that, but when it comes to, are you willing to write a check and get your neighbors to all write a check to pay for half of it or whatever? They don't always show up for that. So I think it doesn't hurt Commissioner Elwell to come up with a criteria if they file complaints and does it fall within a particular criteria. I can't even imagine having a speed table near my house. Just thump, 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 thump. And people think it's a good idea, and then sometimes they get in there and they don't like it once it's there. So is there other ways to slow down the traffic? And it seems like you mentioned some suggestions, JD, but they all come with a cost. Like changing the way the roads are. But who's going to pay for all of those road designs? I'm not against if they come up with a criteria and there's something we can do with it, but I don't think the county wants to get into starting to pay for all of those things and not have a real serious participation with the people making the request.
Yeah, and I'm with Commissioner Kerouac on that. I'm not a big fan of the speed tables and, for, like I said, public safety, all those. Law enforcement, I think, is the most effective way. JD mentioned we got a grant, was at 40 of those radars we can move around the town. We know those will help temporarily, and we see if there's a problem, then that kind of helps, I think, law enforcement on where some of the hot spots go. I think I rode right through Sebring. I used to get calls on from time to time. We got with the sheriff's department. They've had units out there. They've had trailers out there. Haven't had a call in that area in over a year. So once they get on those hot spots, and I think it lasts a while, or people, then they'll go and not, I mean, there's people speeding every day, but if we get a problem like, let's say, a Sparrow, something like that, where they know, okay, this is a hot spot right now, we're gonna work it and get that calm. We're talking about doing the striping. I just think there's a lot of things we can do before we get to the speed tables and cushions, between the striping, the radar, law enforcement, before we get down that road. And like I said, we're talking 4.5, 5 million to the transportation fund. We don't do another thing this year. And there's no end in sight with, when you speak to OMB with the budget, there's all these, and we're not the only county, they're all doing that just based on the money we normally get from fuel tax.
So let me just back and forth with Commissioner Campbell. So you're certainly, while you're not in favor of this, the speed bump, so to speak, you're in favor of maybe doing something regarding those identified hotspots.
Yeah, with the radars and the striping, stuff like that.
And that would be much more affordable, I take it? JD?
Yes, sir, yeah, that'd be correct. I mean, it just depends on the amount of requests you get, obviously, but.
Well, we know the pattern. We know certain groups call, certain individuals call. Sparrow certainly pops up all the time. Heron does as well. So that would make a lot of people feel better if you could say these are the top hotspots based on consumers complaining to law enforcement or complaining to their commissioners, and find if there's something we can do short of the speed bumps to slow it down. I'd be in favor of it. Identify the top hotspots and see what we can do with it.
I mean, yeah, striping is definitely, well, there's a way to do it, but if people are traveling that road nonstop, I wouldn't say it's the same people, I guess you could say. Might not be the best methodology. I mean, it's usually some sort of horizontal deflections or something like that, which in the case of Sparrow, it's kind of a defined footprint because there's a lot of driveways and stuff along there. But it's definitely a possibility to utilize that as, like you said, a pilot project, and we could look and see.
Whether there's signage or striping.
With striping, yeah, I'm sorry.
Signage or striping.
Correct.
And I just know that people really want something to be done. And, but, some things we could maybe achieve, and we would monitor what we're trying and adapt and adjust accordingly. But I think we need to try something. I don't think the whole solution is just to be these speed tables. There's other things we can do, and you talked about that. So I think we should take the hot spots and try to do some things there.
See, what we have is speed tables won't fix the problem by itself. We all understand that, right? If somebody really wants to speed, they're going to go around them. They're going to do whatever they need to they're going to go, as Commissioner Kerouac even mentioned, and I think it's been, they're going to change their traffic pattern. They're going to go somewhere else. Something else is going to happen. Traffic enforcement can't do it by themselves because it's not feasible. It's not logical for us to say, to put enough officers on the road to cover speeding and other traffic issues that we have. I mean, we've got issues on 27 where people are driving scooters and electric scooters and golf carts, and I mean, there's all kinds of things that we need to be addressing really with traffic enforcement that we would love to be able to do, but there's just not enough manpower to kind of address all of those things. And if we were to have a dedicated unit, that'd be great to have that kind of be part of the routine, if you will, the part of their duties. As Commissioner Kerouac mentioned, unless it's a countywide emergency of some sort. But that is easily for a 6-person unit, because it's 6 people, 24/7, if you will, but it's not, some people have to have days off, so that does happen. So I'd say the 6-people unit probably is looking at, according to the sheriff, I'm going to round up just a hair, just because there's going to be probably implementation costs, and there's going to be vehicles and other things like that. I'm going to say it's probably between $1.25 and $1.5 million for a traffic enforcement unit every year. So we're not talking about $10,000 for a speed bump once plus maintenance. We're talking about $1.25 to $1.5 million per year, although it's countywide. So there's trade-offs on all of this. In a perfect world, we would have speed bumps where they're needed, or speed humps rather, or speed tables, where they're absolutely needed and where traffic enforcement can't do it by themselves. I think the use of the signs is useful for a day or two, maybe a week, and then people that are used to driving fast, now they can kind of see if they can break their new record. They can use those as just kind of a reference as to how fast they're going. And I don't mean that to be flippant. I mean that to be, it's kind of reality with some folks that they're not going to slow down under most circumstances unless they get stopped one way or another. So I think it is a blended solution as an answer. I believe the most prudent course for us to do is to look at, I think the sheriff, to his credit, every year gives us a budget which probably includes a traffic enforcement unit in his first draft of his budget. But then pretty quickly, we look at that first draft and we say, man, we can't do X, we need about half of X. And so he cuts that budget down, and the one thing he normally does is he gets rid of the things that are not necessary to, or not necessarily what he's doing right now. New endeavors necessary to kind of get cut a little bit, along with unfunded positions and things like that. Because payroll makes up, obviously, the majority of a sheriff's budget. So I don't want to speak for him, but I think that's probably I'm sure he's probably had a traffic enforcement unit on draft number 1 of the budget several times. It just never makes it a whole lot past that because of our total countywide fiscal constraints. So he gets requested to cut, and he does. So they do the best with what they have, and they do a darn good job. So I think it's a balance between law enforcement and having these speed tables where they are necessary and where they fit the criteria that we set up before it. I agree with Commissioner Campbell in that I think it needs to be a good size, I don't know about 75 participation, because I hate to say it, as we discussed before, people don't live here. So maybe 75% yes among those that respond might be the better way to say that, as opposed to 75% of all the owners. They're going to get a bunch of folks that won't respond. Maybe it's 60 or 2/3 necessarily, what about the people that live just off the main road that you're going to be looking at the speed tables, but they have to use that main road? Do we not include their input? And maybe that number then becomes like 60 to 67%. I think that might be something to do. I think it ought to be a match between the applicant and Highlands County because of, again, the funding issues that Commissioner Campbell pointed out. I believe the rest of the stuff is pretty straightforward, but I also think, like I said, that one solution doesn't fit all, and that once the application fee is paid, because you'd have to have a fee to do it, and then the engineering team goes out there to look at them, look at the situation, and come back with their recommendations, then that then becomes eyes wide open. What is the solution for that area? And that then goes to possibly a MSTU or MSBU rather, or an assessment for those people that, again, they would have to agree. So again, we're just setting these processes in place. But I believe that is a multi-pronged approach to really try to solve the problem, because I don't think one by itself can really do it effectively. One's really, really expensive and still doesn't get you necessarily an officer on your street the way you need to. And then the other one is going to be partially effective, but it's partially effective when you need it the most and for those areas that we need it. We do have a list now of the hotspots, so I don't think it's a bad idea to try some of those things in Placid Lakes, Heron, Flare, Bruns, Sparrow, Thunderbird Hills South, those types of things. I don't think it's a bad idea to try those different things. Just understand it's going to take more than that one thing, I think, to fix it.
Can I just touch on that? Just a couple of things there. I don't think, for the people in this room that have the issues on those certain roads, yes, those are hot spots, but I think we have a handful of those in the county. I agree, over $1 million traffic unit, I don't think is necessary right now, because I think our sheriff's department does a good job of when they see those, get complaints with hot spots, of putting those out and slowing that down for, like I mentioned, the one road I haven't had a complaint now in over a year. And I will say, because we get complaints about Highway 27 a lot, and we just went to the Heartland Regional Transportation meeting this past month. The state of Florida looked for, with crashes, with high injuries, they looked at 8 different criteria to see about doing stuff for safety. Lane departure, DUI, drugs, speeding, motorcycle, pedestrian, bicycle, distracted driver, aging, teenage driver, or day or night. If they happened day or night, it mattered. Speeding didn't make the top 5 in any one of the sections through Highlands County, didn't make it in the top 3 of any county in the Heartland regional area. Lane departure, distracted driving, and aging were predominantly the top 3, and occasionally motorcycle. So I think yes, when you're living on Sparrow somewhere and there's speeding right there, that's a big issue, and I think we can address that without having to go get a whole new unit. But I think most people that complain about 27, it's the Autobahn. Well, the data doesn't support that from the state of Florida or the surrounding counties. So I think sometimes people's perception is, they're flying, they're going fast, but let's just say 27, and that's not the case. But if you live on a Sparrow or Bruns and they're speeding right there, that's a problem. And I think our sheriff's department does a good job of going to those spots. I think we can move around with this grant, different radar things. Yes, it's not permanent, but it will slow people down and get you checked when you're looking back at your speed limit. I'm sure there's people who have gone through a school zone coming up on Sebring High School, like, oh crap, I didn't realize I was doing 25 and it's only 20. But when that red light's flashing and you see a deputy sitting up there, it gets your attention. So I just think there's things we can do that don't cost near as much money, especially, like I said, with the shape that our transportation fund is in, between some of the striping, moving stuff around, and with the radar stuff, and with the support of our local sheriff's department, which I said, to me, the last 4.5 years has been very responsive.
And I was at that same meeting. I was late, but I was at that same meeting that you went to. And if you recall, we did kind of punch a hole in the term lane departure, because lane departure also means speeding. So a lot of times when the person that's speeding goes off in the other lane and it causes an accident, they attribute it to lane departure as opposed to why the person was in that other lane to begin with. So
we won't rehash that, but yeah, I guarantee if the speeding was the law enforcement, well, they would have been a speeding ticket issued on that crash.
I understand. I just know of several fairly noticeable accidents that we've had on 27 in particular, just in the last couple of years, that it was definitely, speeding was a factor. It was a major factor. Okay, so that said, commissioners, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to bother going down and look at recommended criteria? Do you want to go ahead and just simply look at the enforcement through additional traffic enforcement and signage and striping and things like that, or how do you want to proceed from this point?
Yeah, that's fine with me, because the criteria is only relating to speed tables, stuff like that.
Yeah,
or
speed calming. Right.
Yeah,
right. Speed calming and such. Yeah.
I don't think we have 3 votes for those as it is. I don't think we need to go through the criteria.
Okay, so you want to go ahead and just move forward with telling folks,
the other traffic calming measures listed on there that we've discussed,
which is striping, and
we got lanes, we got radars, we got law enforcement, which we say is the most effective way.
Primarily, it's this page right here, and you said so. It's the signage, law enforcement,
lane narrowing down there, if we have anything.
Well, lane narrowing would probably require some kind of, there's costs associated.
Well, that stuff come up in the future.
For new design.
Yes.
Yeah, I would think for new design, you might have that, but you wouldn't have that necessarily for existing, right? Yeah. Okay, so really for existing roads, we're looking primarily at law enforcement and signage, is what you would suggest. Are we in agreement? You all are? Okay. I'm not, but it's okay.
Commissioner Elwell, I make note that if, certainly understand, and you're the one that set up the workshop, and I think it's good that we're having this conversation. if there's a proposal that you want to bring in front of me, or if any others willing, of a pilot program that you would like to see, and you're gonna say, okay, my pilot program is a minimum of this percentage of people wanting it on their street, they would be responsible for paying this portion of the cost of it or what have you, I'd be glad to look at that moving forward. I am not in favor of just trying to put some speed tables on a few roads out there at no cost or no buy-in from the community whatsoever, because what that is going to do, that is just going to open up Pandora's box, and it'll be impossible to treat all people equally the time. So if you want to suggest a program, a pilot program or something like that, I'd be certainly willing to study that and look at it for consideration.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. And that's really all I'm trying to do, is just try to say, okay, I don't want to necessarily suggest one, but I mean, I can. But I was going to just, like I said, I just want to get input from folks to say, you know what, again, one size doesn't fit all. There is a place for these in our county, depending on the neighborhood and depending on the road. And here's the hurdles they have to clear to get to that, I guess is the best way to put it. So
I did want to add to the gentleman's point, I would be for adding chairs and lamps to the sheriff's budget to slow people down.
all right, so it's yes for, all right, so it's law enforcement, radar signs, and yard sales are the, that's what you're at. Okay, and I'm fine, Commissioner Carmack, thank you for bringing that up. I'm fine with bringing back just a proposed, hey, here's some initial thoughts, and, you know, what do y'all think of that? And if you want to adjust or tweak it one way or another, or just kill it all together, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, let me just ask a question, because I know we've got Mr. Mearns here from Sparrow, and you folks live on Sparrow also. You've asked how you could help your community or whatever, how you could get involved or what have you. Part of a test pilot, I don't know if any of you are willing to walk your street and knock on doors of your neighbors and ask them, okay, how many of them on Sparrow Avenue, tell them that you came to this meeting, that we would like some additional input or what have you, and ask a couple basic questions. We're talking to the commission about maybe adding some speed table or speed calming measures on Sparrow Avenue. Would you be willing, would you want that? Would you be willing to pay anything towards that? And would you have any objections if they were located in front of your home? Those three questions. And then gather that data from the people on your street and report back to one of us or administration or engineering or what have you on your findings there, to kind of see what the feeling is out there. You know, it'd be a good way for you to test to see. You know, you might knock on the door and people says, "Oh, I don't want them." Or everybody said, "Yeah, oh, I'm in. It's going to cost me $300 or what have you for my part. Yes, I want it," or what have you. So that would give us a little bit better way to measure whether or not, you know, it's hard to say. All of us want a lot of things, but when we ask people to help decorate the Christmas tree, sometimes, well, no, I don't want to do that. I'd want them, but I don't want to have any additional expense in doing that. Or no, I don't want them in front of my house. I'd love to see the traffic slow down. I see that as being one of the big things with speed tables. I can tell you. I think we could use them in many areas of the county. But I can tell you, I would not want one in front of my house. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to listen to the vehicles going over it day and night. And you know what? They have to go somewhere on that street. And Sparrow is a pretty developed street. There's not a lot of vacant lots. I've lived on Kite Avenue for years. The two houses on Kite Avenue, so I know exactly where you live. I've driven by you on my lawnmower going down the street to mow my house down there. So yes, and yep. We have people that it's just, you know, like I said, it's a societal problem. Unfortunately, you know, there's not easy fixes to that. People are going to be disrespectful. They're going to find a way to skirt the law. When I tell you, if we put them up on Sparrow, I promise you, they're going to stop using Sparrow and they're going to start going somewhere else where they don't have to go over those speed tables. And then they're going to be the people that are going to be sitting out there in front of us and say, now we want them. And that's the big problem that I have up here, because everybody needs to be treated equally. But if you want to do a little test out there to see what kind of reaction that you're getting from your neighbors, I don't have an objection to you doing that. And I'll give you my contact information. You could report those findings back to me, or you could report it to administration or what have you. But That may be something, some good information for us to know whether or not it's even worth spending more taxpayer dollars and staff time in setting up a program that at the end of the day, somebody's not going to use, or they're just, no, this is too complicated, I've got to fill out an application, I've got to pay a fee, I might have to pay for the engineering of it, what have you. You know, we're a growing county. We're 1,100 square miles with over 1,000 miles of roads in this county. We have a budget of $221 million a year here. Polk County has a budget of $3.1 billion a year. We just have a lot of earth on this county, a lot of geographical area to take care of, and a very limited amount of money to do that. That's our big problem here in Highlands County.
All right, any other comments from the commission?
Don, I think that this whole workshop has been a very good education for all of us, and I would like to think that if you or staff or someone comes up with a pilot project that is worth trying, I think we would be open to debate and discussion and perhaps approve it. So I don't think it has to say that when we adjourn the meeting that this subject is settled. I think that if someone has a pilot project that is effective in other areas and it's somewhat cost effective and they've already worked through it all, I'd be open for additional discussion. I don't think we just say now we adjourn and that's all that we do now relative to, calming the speeding in the community.
Okay, anybody else? JD, are you okay? Anything else from staff?
No, sir, I'm good, if you're all good.
And had some special guests here. Sheriff, did you have anything that you wanted to add in at this point, or are you just hanging out? Got nothing to do this afternoon, or just? Okay. Certainly appreciate you and your team here, and all their efforts as well, and look forward to that budget request next year, so this coming year. This year, yeah, just a couple months. Okay, all right, very good. I want to thank everybody, all folks out there. I will do a little bit of work here, and as Commissioner Kerouac and Roberts mentioned, we'll come back with just a proposal. And like I said, my whole goal for this particular workshop was for us to add one more arrow to our quiver. One more little way that we can possibly deal with this, which I don't know that I conveyed it well at the very beginning because we're kind of getting to the point where I'm being asked to go ahead and do that, but that's really what I was trying to get all of us to do today. So, but that's okay. I'll come back and I'll just take one more step forward with it and then come back and then we can attack it or massage it as adjusted as needed. So that's no problem at all. Appreciate the input from everybody. Thank you very much. With that, this workshop is officially closed and you folks are free to have lunch. It's 1:36 p.m. Thank you all for being here.